going to invite Carolyn to join me at the front, and we'll move this over. We wanted the children to hear that story, and through this series, the children are taking the story and working in its face to learn about the story and the values of that story. We're lucky to have a few minutes now with Carolyn in this service to talk about her book, and then invite you to stay following. So, Carolyn, I'm aware that many different cultures come up with their own quote-unquote creation story. And even in your Bible, if you're not aware of this, there are two creation stories, and they're quite different. And I love that the Bible holds together contradictions like two different creation stories. But where did this story come from for you?
It arrived basically fall long, I guess.
Sorry, I got to do this. What am I doing? Okay, technical difficulties, number 5. Is that number 5? Is that good? You just turned it off. No, I didn't touch it. We good? Touch the bottom.
Test.
Hi, Gary. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Got it.
Where did the story come from? It came from a desire, I guess, to say something hopeful, but something real, and to kids, and to give honor to the kids who are leading us in the world today, whether it's environmental activism or peace or whatever it is. And we're going to hear from Greta a little bit later, I think, but she's one of the people who is leading us. She's 16 years old on the world stage. So I think it was that was the desire, but the story kind of arrived just blump, like that.
Blump.
Sometimes that happens.
I like when blump happens. That's good. I always think of that Saturday morning, blump, for a Sunday, right? In the images, we got to say something about the artistry. Who did the artistry? And you have such a deep interest in the earth. Where'd that come from for you? Who drew those?
So that's Margaret Kyle, and I met her through working on curriculum in Kelowna through the Whole People of God curriculum. I don't know if people remember that or not. And Seasons of the Spirit, that's a cross-Christian curriculum. And so she was an artist who has provided amazing illustrations. The Children's Family Bible, for example, she did all the illustrations for that. So when she agreed to do the illustrations for this, and the book is published by Woodlake Books, I was thrilled. And she sent them all done, basically, sketched out, roughed out. And when I looked at them, I was amazed because we were totally on the same page. It wasn't a matter of having to go back and forth. And that was lovely. So Margaret Kyle, watch for her work. She's got lots of beautiful work out.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on a little farm north of Toronto, 100 acres. Half of it was forest, and half of it was worked by my dad and the rest of us. So going outside the door, there were non-human beings everywhere. And that was a good thing.
So the farm and being close to the earth and the animals and the trees and all that is in creation is sort of your home. But you also, I've known you for a long time, you have a strong advocacy and connection to children. And the Bible talks about let the little children lead. Why are children so important to you?
That's a good question. I used to be one.
Some of us still are. But really, why do we have to listen to children? We grow up and then we kind of do this. What's the wisdom in children? Why are you inviting us through this story to reconnect to our inner child? Like, can you say anything about that? What is the wisdom there for you?
because they know things that we kind of forget. And so when you hang around with somebody like the little, where did he go?
Tiberius
He went downstairs.
he's
They
exploring.
They remember things that they see, and they call our attention to them. And if we don't hang around with little kids, then we're missing out, I think, on being reminded of what's really important. I saw something when I was waiting for a train one time. There was a little girl, probably about 4 or 5 years old, walking along with her mom, and she was singing, just happy, happy, happy singing. And her mom was on her cell phone, and there was a person sitting beside me, and I turned to her and I said, "Did you hear that little girl?" But she was also on her cell phone. You know, I don't know what, but so we can't do that and live a full life.
Yeah.
Jesus said, "Suffer the little children." Isaiah said, "A little child shall lead them." These are ancient things. It's nothing new to listen to kids.
Last week you were at a writer's workshop. Tell us a little bit about that and who was there.
Okay, so last week I was at Youth Write, and I've been going there for about 20 years. Gail Sobat is a writer in Edmonton who has organized a camp for kids who love to write. Children from age 12 to 19 come from all over Alberta, and they work with professional artists and professional writers and musicians and dancers and all kinds of professional people in the arts. There are about 50 or 60 kids at each camp. It's divided by age. And the one that I was at was in Bragg Creek at Camp Kiwanis. And I had 14 kids who signed up for a workshop that I did. And it was writing, but it was writing from the perspective of non-human beings. And so the workshop was called Other Voices. And at the end of the week, we had a council of all beings. And so we had made masks to represent our beings. And they had done a whole lot of writing to explore what their beings might be thinking about humans and what their beings might be thinking about the state of the world. And then we sat in a council on the ground with our masks and had a conversation about how the beings might be regarding what's going on in the world and how they might be regarding what we're trying to do. And those kids are real. They were from 12 to 15, and they know what's going on, and they're frustrated because they can't vote. So we need to vote for, after we listen to them, we have to never, ever pass up the opportunity to vote. I mean, that was one of the things that the kids talked about.
What an amazing experience to be with them. When we were putting this morning together, we do on Tuesday, we meet a small group and we plan the day. And one of the young people listening to the conversation, after hearing a bit about your book and reading it, she said to the group, she said to Carolyn, how are you not weeping all the time? And you had an answer for that, and I wonder if you'd share that. Why are you not weeping all the time, she says?
Actually, I am weeping. Some of the time anyway. What helps me not to weep is hanging out with kids and taking action, because I think if I stayed still, then I would be frozen and weeping all the time. There's a lot to weep about. But weeping can also clear your eyes. And I've learned from Indigenous people here that tears are sacred, that we need to honor tears, not choke them back, because when we need our tears to make us fully human, I think. So I'm a big fan of handkerchiefs, actually. And I know that the ancient Jews actually had little tiny, beautiful little jars that looked like little perfume bottles, and they were for collecting tears in them. And I think because they honored tears as well. It's interesting that try to buck up and keep a stiff upper lip and all that. Where'd that ever come from? That's not right. So the tears, I think, need to happen and should happen. It's right that they should happen, especially where we live and how we're living today. And that leads to the birds, I guess.
Yeah, will you tell us about that? There's a table set up in this room here to your left. I want you to make sure you see it. Tell us a bit about what's on the table.
Yeah, so there are 4 dioramas or sort of little things for you to look at. And they are my lament. And I did cry a lot when I was making those things. I won't go into the big explanation, but I came across a magpie wake about 3 or 4 years ago. And I was amazed by that. I knew elephants wept and mourned their, other elephants when they died, but I didn't know magpies did that. And since then, I've learned that all kinds of non-human beings also mourn. And I think that that's quite a beautiful connection to us. So the magpies were the first I saw, and then I had 3 years of continuing to find dead birds. I found crows, I found grouse, I found a little chickadee, and then I mentioned it to a friend, and she came to the door with a dead duck. And so what I have ended up doing is learning how to deal with bones of birds I didn't know before. And I have, with respect, taken the skulls of these birds that I found, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do with them. I just put peroxide on them and whitened them a little, and then I didn't know, then what am I supposed to do? So I just kind of waited for somebody to tell me, and I don't know who that would have been. The goddess, I guess, whispered in my ear and said, well, what about a courtroom scene? And so there is a courtroom scene over there. I made that one first, but it's actually last in the progression of my thinking. So it was a matter of following my intuition. And these bird skulls would like to travel. They've been in the Unitarian Church. They've been to the Inter-Mennonite Church. They've been at a couple of ecological events. So if you're hosting an event and want some dead birds, I'll bring them. But they are my lament. And once I finish the 4th one, I've never found a dead bird since. So it was a moment in time, 3 years. And once I figured out what to do, then I did it, and then we were moving on to something else, I guess. Don't know.
You know, in your book and in the world, there's lots of naysayers, and all of us are up against or in conversation with naysayers. We're not all going to agree, but what's your take on the naysayers in the book or in the world? What's your conversation with them about?
Yep, the naysayers. So Jesus, 2,000 years ago, told us what to do about them. You shake the dust off your sandals and move on. I mean, he did. He told that to the disciples. So I can't, I'm too old to waste time. And I don't want to waste time on a bunch of naysayers. I'll have a conversation, and then I have to, do what Jesus said, I think, and move on, because there's more to do, lots to do.
Nice. You use the word remember in your book, and we greeted each other by a simple word of remember. Why does the word remember matter to you? Why is that the word that came to you in the story in such a powerful way?
I think partly because we have been told by our ancestors, wherever they originated, what we need to have a decent world, a kind community, and a beautiful life ourselves. We know it. We've been told it. But we get mixed up and forget. We get all off track and think that we have to invent something new. No, we don't. We have to remember who we are, I think.
And remember, as some churches have a communion table like this one, they'll say, do this in remembrance of me. Remembering is not just a Christian concept, it's a Jewish concept, it's interreligious. the importance of remembering with our mind and remembering one to another. So I love that that's the word that we need to remember in that story. So as people go off into their world beyond the sanctuary of this place, what can we at Hillhurst take with us today? What do you suggest? And how does it connect with the focus of Indigenous, or the 7 generations, which is towards the end of the book?
I think the last line in the book is, if you go outside and listen, you will hear her. And that line makes me weep, actually, because I believe that it's true. We're so plugged in and busy that we don't remember to take the time to go outside and listen. And if you do, you might hear little Angel's laughter. You might hear her whisper to you, "There's one thing you can do." We know inside what we need to do. We just have to do it.
It's like the last week or the week before, I was saying, Mary Oliver said, pay attention. So listen and be astonished. We actually might hear, and then share it and tell the story. We want to thank you for the beautiful story after the beginning and the partnership and the drawings. And thank you and Bill and your family for being part of our community. Your creative spirit, your passion, your laughter, your tears deepen our experience and open us. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today.